Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 18th of March 2025. These are the stories that we will be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the US-Iran tensions, with Donald Trump saying that Iran will be held responsible for the Houthi attacks. A statement like that comes comes as a very irregular patch on the current state of relations that were pushing the US and Iran towards talks on the Iranian nuclear issue. But it seems as if the US has somehow changed its stance vis-a-vis Iran with the strong statements, and of course Iran being now in the spotlight. This at the same time when the attacks are also going on Houthis in Yemen, where many people have been killed and scores injured. On the same time, or at the same time, in Gaza also around 200 plus people have been killed in these last few hours because Israel has restarted its brutalities in the Strip. And this also negates what the ceasefire agreement in fact was signed for. What is going to happen as far as US-Iran and Gaza is concerned will be part of our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Pakistan's solar policy. Now, there is a decision that has been recently taken to significantly revise down buyback prices at which the power distribution companies purchase electricity from rooftop solar system owners. And we will be discussing different aspects and modalities of that, and what this signifies for the common man. Then we'll be talking about the 12th death anniversary of the 1965 hero, Air Commodore Muhammad Mahmood Alam, otherwise known as MM Alam. We have the MM Alam Road in Lahore in his name as well. Of course, today is his 12th death anniversary, and we'll be highlighting many of the achievements that he has had, and of course, how he has defended Pakistan against the nefarious designs of India. This will be the lineup for today. We'll begin with our first segment, and that concerns the US-Iran tensions that have recently increased in the wake of the US President's statement implicating Iran behind the Houthi attacks, and of course putting more pressure on Iran. We have been joined by Waqar Rizvi, who is a senior geopolitical analyst, to discuss more on that. Waqar, thank you very much to have joined us. Waqar, although the US and Iran have in the past also discussed or highlighted the tensions that that emanate between the two, but there were recently a lot of insinuations of talks on the Iranian nuclear issue. But even then, US President Donald Trump was arm twisting Iran to come to the deal, and that is why there was a certain negative reaction. Now that he has directly implicated Iran also, and says that he is going to hold Iran directly responsible for any future attacks by Yemen's Houthi rebels, what does that bode as far as US-Iran relations is concerned, and the pressure that US is apparently putting on Iran? Will Iran be pressurized?
So, we've seen this game play out for many decades, right? Ever since the revolution, essentially, the pressure has been increasing on Iran by the United States. Certainly right now, the pressure is at a peak point, specifically if we speak economically as well. That has obviously made life very hard for normal Iranians. That is a huge, I would say, factor in if the Iranian government does come forward and enter into any discussions with the United States. However, as we've already heard from the Supreme Leader himself, essentially rejecting the letter that Trump had sent him, right? So when it comes to this latest threat regarding Yemen, as you may well know, the Iranian ambassador to the United Nations has also rejected all these threats, saying that, of course, the Iranians are concerned and do not want any provocations and or increase in tensions in the region or even war. And they've essentially told Trump to stand down, that they are not responsible for what the Houthis do, even though he has very openly admitted that there would have been at one point in time, this is one of the lawmakers in the Iranian parliament has said, there was a point in time when the Iranians may have given military technology know-how or even military technology itself to the Houthis, but that they are not at this specific point in time doing so. That was I'm paraphrasing, of course, his statement. So it's very important to keep these factors in mind.
All right, Waqar, but seeing the kind of pressure that the US is putting now on Iran, do you feel Iran will be tempted or pushed towards coming to the negotiating table as far as its nuclear plan is concerned?
See, you have to understand the Iranian psyche. So, and I don't know how much of the domestic politics your viewers may have been following in Iran, but we had Mohammad Javad Zarif, who was the former foreign minister of Iran, who is, at least in Iran, is viewed as a very pro-U.S. Iranian politician because he studied in the U.S. He has a lot of quote unquote friends within U.S. Establishment circles. And he was, for lack of a better word, ousted. He had to be appointed by the President Pezeshkian to a position which essentially had no oversight as far as from the parliament or otherwise. So that goes to show you as just a very small example of the kinds of feelings that the normal Iranian has towards anyone who wants to even take a step towards the United States after all these years of pressure, after all these years of sanctions, the killing of Soleimani. I mean, the list is endless, really. It's really not a very popular move to be taking at this time.
All right, but at the same time, Iran has constantly been saying that its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes. Why is it so hard to digest for the US?
Because I think that the U.S. it sees this as one pressure tactic, right? It doesn't really matter if the nuclear program is peaceful or not. It's never been about that, really. And this Iranian experts have been saying for many years, as well as many other geopolitical analysts, that this is not really about the nuclear program, because at this point in time, it doesn't really even matter. The Iranian government is, for lack of a better word, an arch rival government for the United States, especially in the region. And so therefore, at this point, with the enmity that these two governments have, it's about finding any excuse really to continue the pressure. So if the nuclear program is it, so be it. Regardless of the fact that, of course, when it came to the nuclear deal that had been signed by the United States during Obama's administration, the U.S., even under Obama, didn't live up to its part of the deal. So, the Iranians have done, at least in their eyes, as much as they can do.
Waqar, I'd like to understand 2, 3 things regarding the comments, the recent statements that Donald Trump has made. He says that Iran has played the innocent victim as far as this conflict is concerned. Then he also says that hundreds of attacks being made by Houthis, the thugs based in Yemen, quote unquote, who are hated by the Yemeni people, all emanate from and are created by Iran. And he says any further attack will be met with great force, and there's no guarantee that that force will stop there. What I want to understand is A, how justified are the comments when he implicates Iran very directly in these recent statements? And secondly, what kind of reaction are you going to see from the Iranian side in the coming days?
So, when it comes to the accusation or the allegation, I'm not sure which word to use here, which is most appropriate, but that the Iranians are completely the ones that are behind every action the Houthis take. That's obviously completely, it's just not even practical and not even reasonable to even see it that way. Certainly, of course, there's a lot of moral support that the Iranians provide the Houthis, as well as I said, there's an Iranian lawmaker, I forget his name off the top of my head right now, but he was an MP in the Iranian parliament, and he has admitted that there was a time when the Iranians did provide some military know-how and possibly even direct military technology to the Houthis. So, of course, in the American eyes, in the Israeli eyes, and in the eyes of many people around the world, it can be argued that, of course, the Houthi power at this point in time, at the very least, their military know-how may very well emanate from the Iranians. And I don't think necessarily that the Iranians would see that as a bad thing. They would see that as, a small group that is defending their country. And we essentially gave them the know-how or the technology or even the weapons, really, to be able to defend themselves. And now that's an argument, you can go back and forth regarding that. But there is some understanding there. I can understand the point on the part of the United States on trying to exaggerate that then further and saying that even right now what the Houthis are doing, even though they had been under blockade for many years, as you well know as well. So how on earth would the Iranians be able to get through such a blockade? The Iranians do not have the kinds of technologies that the possibly Americans have to be able to, completely go through blockades and get weapons to these groups. That's the first point. Secondly, as far as the Iranian reaction goes, we've sort of already seen it. And this will, of course, play out as well into how the Iranians respond to the Trump letter, because Araghchi, who is the foreign minister of Iran, is traveling to Oman, and there are rumors, of course, that he may very well be traveling with some sort of a response to the U.S. letter, the Trump letter, even though within Iran and the Iranian circles have been downplaying the letter altogether, rejecting it all out, saying that there's already nothing to talk about because even the letter did, of course, include many threats. So I think that's where it stands right now. I do not expect things to change a lot in the coming days, unless, of course, there is an escalation vis-a-vis violence, either towards the Iranians or the Houthis.
All right. Let's see how this boards along. But of course, it's a very alarming situation as far as the whole region is concerned. Hamidreza, political analyst, joins us from Tehran, and he's on the online. Thank you very much, Hamidreza, to have joined us. I'd like to understand, the Houthis have always maintained that they are carrying out these attacks in solidarity with the Palestinian people because of the atrocities that are being meted out to them in the Gaza Strip. And they had also stopped that once the ceasefire agreement had begun. But now that the situation has again gone to another tangent altogether, they have restarted these attacks. In your point of view, is this pressure tactic by the Houthis on the US or on Israel having the necessary reaction or effect on them, or is it backfiring? What's your take on that?
The Houthis actually try to defend Gazans and Palestinians. And they have clearly mentioned that, as you just said, they stopped it when the ceasefire was announced in Gaza. But the point is that the Americans are trying to support the Israelis in future attacks. And they want to stop this resistance from the Yemen side, especially in the Red Sea. And the pressure that they suffered at the trade routes was actually, the traffic was decreased by 90%, at least 90%. Some reports are saying that 96% of the trade were actually stopped at that time in that corridor. So it was something that is against the interest of the Americans and the Zionist regime. And for the future, they want to stop this barrier and they want to stop this part of resistance because they suffered it and they never actually thought that it would be like that. They underestimated the Yemeni power in that region. So they are now trying to stop them. But the only claims that we are hearing from President Trump and the Americans, accusing Iran of supporting them and considering Iran responsible for any attacks that the Houthis would carry out, it means that they have very soon realized, in a couple of days, they have realized that they cannot stop the Houthis. They have realized that they cannot stop the Yemeni people, and they are all totally ready to defend Palestinians and fight to the end to stop the Americans and the Israelis. So that is the situation, that they have already realized it, and I think and expect them to try to find some way out of this quagmire that they are stuck in. Very sooner or later, they will try to find, they might carry out, just like before, they might carry out a number of attacks and claim on media that they have defeated the Yemenis, the Houthis. They have targeted some strategic targets and facilities. Just like before, they only attacked empty places and places that were not strategic at all. So it is the future of this situation to me.
All right. But Mr. Hamidreza Gholamzadeh, I'd like to also understand, On the one hand, these are the very, very strong statements that Donald Trump is, giving vis-a-vis Iran, and of course, these are not mild statements, to say the least. On the other hand, there are the continuous aerial attacks that have also happened on Yemen, which resulted in the killing of 53 plus people, and of course, many scores who were injured as well. Is this signaling the beginning of a widening of the war in the Middle East that was supposed to end with the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas?
First of all, reading between the lines shows that these claims and even these attacks on Yemen and Gaza show that they have lost their power. The first signal we can receive is that they have already lost the game. They have realized that. So the harsher and the tougher that the claims are, shows that they are trying to bully Iran and the others, and they think that by frightening Iran and the others, they can actually convince Iran to force it to go to the negotiation table. That's the point behind all these claims, with taking Iran responsible and attacking Houthis to make Iran fear from possible attacks. Because the bottom line is that the Americans cannot get into a war with Iran. When they got into war in Afghanistan and in Iraq, they faced unlimited war and unfinished wars, and it stalked them for 20 years. And they were Afghanistan and Iraq, which were much more, let's say, much less powerful than Iran. Iran is already capable of defending itself, and if they attack Iran, it would translate into an all-out war in the region, which can affect the whole world because of the oil and all the other strategic factors of this region. And the first loser would be Americans, because they have already lost the economic warfare to the Chinese, and they have always been trying to contain China. It was since President Obama, they said they are going to have the pivot to Asia. They wanted to contain China from them, but so far they have failed to be able to go there and focus the power on containing China. So if they get into any war, if the Americans get into any war in this region with Iran, it would be a total disaster for them, and they would need to get into that, because this time Iran is going to respond very harshly, because Iran has nothing to lose anymore if there is going to be any attacks on Iranian targets. So Iran has no other choice but to respond very strongly, and that would be something that means either the Americans should accept the defeat and leave and stop the war and leave the region, or they need to get into a war. Both of them is a lost game for the Americans. And so all these claims and all these points and all these first raids means that they have lost power and they have lost control of the situation, and they want just to show that they are on the upper hand.
Waqar, coming to you, the United Nations as well as China demand for de-escalation from both the sides. The United Nations asks both sides to cease military activity. China calls for dialogue and de-escalation of tensions in the Red Sea. Will this be complied with? Will there be any middle ground or any cessation or reduction in the current tensions that exist between the two sides?
I think that right now the Houthis are sort of proving themselves, right? Again, they've already attacked, as you know well, some American ships. There are reports that one may have already been hit as well, directed, in fact. Although there are, some skeptics out there regarding that. So I think that as long as the Houthis are able to hold out for a bit longer, then I think that there may very well be some sort of cessation. If the Americans, the Israelis, and others sense weakness on the part of the Houthis or find some weakness, then that may very well mean that this will go on for a bit longer. Yes, of course, the Red Sea is extremely important. So it's not just important to the Americans or the Yemenis, but it's important to the entire international community, really, because it's a very important route. So certainly the Chinese role here would be very important, but also the role of regional countries, even the likes of Pakistan and others, the GCC countries as well, for which, of course, any war or any escalation in that specific region would be disastrous.
All right, but Waqar, has also like to understand, with this rhetoric that we are seeing from the US side, it seems as if they want to escalate the current tensions with Iran to another level. But when you look at the previous government, of course, which Trump has called pathetically weak, their Pentagon spokesperson had said in 2024 that we do not want to see a regional war. Again, Parnell, who is working with the current government, also specifies that Trump is not seeking war either, despite the US's new threats. He says this is not about an endless offensive. This is not about a regime change in the Middle East. This is about putting American interests first. I'd like to understand the whole perspective behind this, because I'm a little bit confused when I read all the statements and then the counter statements that come from the US administration side. Is Trump seeking war, or is there more to it than meets the eye?
Trump is seeking what any U.S. president seeks, and that is for all countries to essentially bow down to it, right? And I think this is what any superpower would do, right? So as a superpower, they want everyone to just say, yes, sir, and to accept their way of operating within the Middle East region or any other region of the world. The Iranians have always said, no, we do not go along with that. And many other countries, of course, also say no to them. And then we have various different actions that the US takes against those respective governments as well. So I think this is about having the Iranians bow down to the US, which I do not foresee happening anytime soon, at least. As far as war goes in the region, or Trump's view on war altogether, in his first term, he killed Qasem Soleimani. That was very provocative, of course, in the Iranian eyes. And even now, he's being very provocative vis-a-vis these statements. And, we have statements of U.S. officials saying that we believe in peace through strength, which, for lack of a better word, is essentially we want to bomb you into submission. And so that's a very skewed way of looking at the world and expecting that everyone will just fall into submission as you like.
All right. Coming to you, Hamidreza, Gholamzadeh, there have been protests by the people in Sana'a against what is happening and, of course, the killings that have happened in Yemen by the US strikes. Do you feel this will put some pressure or any pressure on the US administration?
The public pressure can always be and always have been. Right now, some even American officials are protesting the attacks by the Americans. The Congresswoman Marjorie Greene has just mentioned about that and said, as opposed actually, the attacks on Yemen. The public support, not only inside Yemen but also across the world, are also for the Yemenis, and they are against the attacks. But the point is that the Americans, when they get to one policy, they are so stubborn that they will not stop that. For the past nearly 1.5 years after the October 7, 2023, the whole world were against the Israelis. And the only country that was supporting the Zionist regime was the Americans. Even the British stopped vetoing the resolutions in the UN Security Council, but it was the Americans who continued the support and have always been continuing that support. Because both of them are the evil regime, and they support one another. So the public support just proves for the Houthis that the way and that the need for them to continue the defense of Yemen and Gaza together, and to retaliate on the attacks that the Americans are doing. Because all the Yemenis are so brave and so supportive of their government and supportive of the Palestinians that they are ready to lose everything to fight against the brutalist regimes and to usurpers like the Zionist regime and the American regime. So it doesn't stop the Americans but it supports the Houthis, and they would retaliate the attacks. And these attacks actually would stop the Americans because they only can understand the force and the language of force, not the diplomacy or negotiation.
All right, all right. Waqar, coming to Gaza's situation, a lot of media channels are reporting around 100 people who have been killed in this latest spate of attacks on the people in Gaza, and there are others that talk even about 200 plus people who have been killed in this Israeli bombing of multiple areas across the Strip in the early hours this morning, and many have been wounded in these Israeli attacks as well. In Khan Yunus, there have been attacks. There are reports of 77 plus that have been killed, and at least 20 people killed in the Gaza city in the north of the Gaza Strip. Now that these brutalities have begun, does that mean that Israel does not want to continue with the ceasefire agreement, or is this a pressure tactic or some side kind? What are you seeing? What do you foresee? Because at the same time, there are also the ceasefire talks that are beginning, but because of the difference in opinion, Hamas saying that it wants a second phase, and Israel and the US saying that they want an extension of 50 to 60 days to the first phase of the agreement so that they can get the maximum of hostages back. If there is, status quo, or there is no way that this each side is going to relent to the other, is that the only way out of it, to kill more Palestinians?
When it comes to ceasefire or ceasefire that Israel signs onto, it never really respects it, right? I mean, we can argue that the Israelis have never really respected a ceasefire when it's come to Gaza, or even Lebanon, or Syria, or Iraq. I mean, we can really list an endless amount of countries where the Israelis have carried out strikes of some sort over the years, and they've gotten away with it, even though they would claim that, hey, we're not actually in a state of war with these respective territories and entities. So, let's put that to a side for a moment. I don't think the Israelis are actually really going to respect any ceasefire, even if something is signed onto. That's the first reality, because evidence proves that. As far as with the Israelis or whatever they're looking for, yes, of course, the hostages for them are extremely important. It's a huge domestic political headache for Netanyahu. But at the same time, if you look at it from Hamas's point of view or from the Palestinian point of view, why would they give everyone up at this stage when the Israelis are already continuing to attack them anyways, and have been attacking them and have kept them under this blockade? And, the humanitarian situation is dire anyways. So that is their one card to play to protect themselves. And so, I do not see that situation changing even from the Hamas side anytime soon.
So what happens to this ceasefire agreement? Is it the end of this?
I don't think it's the end of it. I just think that, as I said already, I think that, sure, the Hamas may sign on to it, and I think that some of the Arab countries may pressure Hamas into signing it onto that. But I think everybody agrees and knows that the Israelis are not actually going to respect it anyways. They're not necessarily going to declare a war. But they will continue their bombings nevertheless and claim, they're doing targeted bombings, or however they like to term it. But nevertheless, it is, a low-level warfare happening, regardless of a ceasefire in place.
I agree with you on that. Hamidreza, Gholamzadeh, last question as far as you are concerned. Israeli attacks have also killed 3 people in Syria, 2 people in southern Lebanon. And of course, we all know what has happened in Yemen. Lebanon's defense ministry says a ceasefire agreement has been reached to end clashes on the Lebanon-Syrian border, where at least 7 people were killed. Do you feel such a ceasefire will hold, or is the fate of this ceasefire also going to be exactly the same as what happened between Israel and Hamas?
Actually, the ceasefire in Lebanon was more fragile than the one in Gaza. But the point is that now we have the regime in Syria as well, which is attacking Lebanon also. So they have the proxy. The Jordanese government in Syria is, in one way or the other, playing the role of the Israeli proxy and the Turkey proxy in Syria. And there are some conflicts from the other side as well. So sometimes the Syrians are attacking Lebanon, and it is very likely that the Israelis stop and actually they breach the ceasefire in Lebanon as well. one point is important to consider, and it is the domestic politics of the Israel. There were supposed to be some courts for Prime Minister Netanyahu, and these fightings and these attacks actually postponed the legal procedures against Netanyahu. So he launched the war in Gaza. He launched the attacks again in Gaza, and now is asking the judicials to postpone the court because of the attacks. It would happen again in Lebanon as well. So he just can create some problems and some crisis in order to survive himself and to avoid any, let's say, courts and any legal procedures that can target him, can be against him, because he has done a lot of, let's say, illegal things, and he is quite sure that he would be convicted at the court. So he is just trying, because he is sticking to the power. He wants to remain in power, and because of that, he's attacked. So it is very likely that if he cannot continue the campaign in Gaza, he would turn against Lebanon as well. One key factor here is that, in terms of foreign policy, not domestic one, one key factor is that they are thinking, and they are actually considering that Iran has been weakened, and they think because of the miscalculation, they think that they can continue and restart the war against Houthis, against Hezbollah, and against Hamas in these three places and these three countries. And then by weakening the axis of resistance, they can target Iran next as well. So that is a longer-term agenda that they have, but it is a failed one, actually, already failed, because it is based on the miscalculation. But the point about the ceasefire in Lebanon depends on the situation, as I said. Now they have a campaign in Gaza. If it's necessary, they can stop it. They can begin another one in Lebanon just to survive the prime minister.
All right. So, I mean, the situation is becoming more complex with every passing day. Thank you so very much, Hamidreza Gholamzadeh, to have joined us all the way from Tehran, political analyst, discussing his point of view as far as the current escalation between and the US is concerned. Last question to you, Waqar, and that concerns the blockade of food aid and other kinds of aid that has entered its 16th day to add to the electricity is not being provided, which adds to the misery of the people. And then, of course, the Israeli settlers that are creating havoc as well, and so on and so forth. And the list is added as far as the miseries of the people in Palestine is concerned. What, in your point of view, is the Israeli end game plan as far as the Gaza Strip or Palestine or the occupied West Bank is concerned?
I think many Israeli officials, ministers have already made it quite obvious, right? They want to take over Gaza. And I think that's always been the goal and always will remain the end goal. Whether or not they achieve that is obviously up for debate. I don't think Hamas and or the people in Gaza will let them do so without a fight. But I believe that to be the end game. I believe that they just want to take over that territory. Trump had pretty much blurted that out, but then had to walk that back as well, saying that actually no one's going to be leaving Gaza. That was his latest statement in regards to an update on a statement that he had made earlier, saying that essentially Trump would be taking over, or the Israelis would be taking over. And then, he had released these AI images as well of what Gaza may look like under Israeli/American control. So I believe that is the honest end game here, specifically when it comes to Gaza.
All right. Thank you so very much, Waqar. Rizvi, a senior geopolitical analyst, joining us online, was giving us his point of view as far as this current escalation of tensions in the Middle East is concerned. Let's come to our second story, and that concerns Pakistan's solar policy. There's a decision that has been made by the Pakistani government to significantly revise the buyback prices at which the power distribution companies purchase electricity from rooftop solar system owners. And there's a lot of debate. A lot of people are saying it's a step in the right direction and will provide price equity for all consumers, but there are also the critics that say otherwise. What is the right point of view, and how is Pakistan's energy policy or solar policy going to help the common man in the long run and also stabilize Pakistan's economy? We've been joined by Dr. Khalid Waleed. He's an energy expert, joins us right here in the studios. Dr. Khalid, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Khalid, the ECC of the Cabinet approves a set of amendments for the existing net metering regulations that are aimed at reducing the growing financial burdens on the grid consumers. I mean, there's a whole detail. They will buy the unused surplus solar electricity from net meter consumers at 10 per unit, down by nearly 63% from 27, and then they will sell the grid power back to them at rupees 42 during off-peak hours and 48 during the peak hours. The power division justifies this policy shift. It says that existing net metering consumers were causing 9 paisa per unit impact on the average electricity costs, with a total annual impact of 101 billion rupees. In your point of view, why is this the correct step towards energy price equity for all consumers? Because there are a lot of opinions, as far as social media is concerned, as far as people are concerned. Some are wary, some are saying it's a step in the right direction. What's your take?
Well, thank you so much. Very burning sort of issue right now in Pakistan. There are two perspectives. One is, if you see it from the perspective of National Grid of Pakistan, which has excess capacity, installed capacity. We have like 45,000 plus megawatts installed.
And we are not using, we're using a bare minimum of that.
That is underutilized, and we are not using optimally. And we have fixed charges in terms of capacity payments. Whether we use it or not use it, we have to pay our power plants, which means we have take or pay contracts. So whenever the grid's demand declines, those who are on the national grid, electricity price increases for them. And solar rooftop or net metering is one way of declining this electricity demand. So in that way, Minister of Power Division is right that whenever there are solar uptake or exponential solar uptake, the burden lies on those who cannot simply afford solar or on the national grid. But from the second perspective, this is not their fault. I mean, this is not the net meter's fault. This is the fault of that we have done these long-term lucrative sort of power purchasing agreements. So if we have this holistic sort of a policy where we use net metering at one point and other point we sort of utilize that excess capacity, this would not happen. So we need to sort of take it in a holistic way, integrated way. One integrated way is to spread awareness to the consumers that they can increase their electricity consumption. For example, in spite of selling electricity, surplus electricity to the grid, they can electrify their kitchen appliances, reducing their expenditures on natural gas. So there is one another way. But this decision at this point, this will create negative sentiments in the solar market, and we have seen that prices have come down of solar panels as well. One thing to sort of have in mind is that once this buyback rates have declined, now people will think of going completely off-grid, which means they would be installing more battery storage so that they are not reliant on the national grid. So this is again, demand would decline further in the longer period of time, and that will again cause burden on those who are still connected with the national grid.
Like myself, like yourself, I'm sure as well. Now, the people in power say that these revisions have become necessary due to three factors, and I'll take these factors one by one. The first is that most rooftop solar power owners have installed far more surplus solar power than they need for self-consumption. This, they say, helps them export surplus electrons to the grid during the day and import them after the sunset, as they have been doing in the past as well. And of course, exported to these, all these electrons that are exported to distribution firms in winter are often reclaimed in the summer season when the need for electricity is much, much more. This amounts to using the grid as a big storage battery while avoiding payment of capacity charges and transmission costs on electricity consumption. What's your take on that?
Well, that's true that the people, net meters, they were using national grid as a storage. So they sort of they need to pay those charges. But again, we need to think about that how we can sort of use this tool effectively. If I share some numbers, particularly
please
in terms of consumption patterns in Pakistan, residential consumption of electricity is dominated. For example, 50% of total electricity consumption comes from residential side, and only 18 to 20% comes from industrial side, which means we are generating electricity with dollars and using it, consuming it for unproductive reasons, not linking it with our industrial economy. Net meters or solar rooftop, they can be a very effective tool to convert this solar mix towards consumption mix towards the productive economy. For example, if government focuses on reducing residential load through rooftop solar, then the decline demand can be fulfilled by industrial consumers. But again, this is a holistic policy. We need to bring it a whole of a sector approach so that we can resolve this issue. But again, inequalities are there. For those who cannot afford this luxury of solar, they would bear the burnt of increased electricity prices. One very effective way can be if government subsidized solar for those who are protected consumers or lifeline consumers, because they get subsidy on expense of those who are consuming more from the national grid. That is cross subsidization, particularly those who are consuming 500 to 700 units of electricity. So maybe providing solar panels to protected and lifeline consumers, that will bring the cross subsidization rate down, and the government can subsidize or bring that effective tariff back so that grid's demand increases, and we encourage those who are consuming more electricity from the national grid. And in that way, the fixed charges, they would be divided with a higher base, and they would that would decline in per capita terms.
Another reason, Dr. Khalid, also for this recent decision taken is that affluent urban net metered households cause a 9 paisa per unit impact on average electricity cost, and that could increase to 3.6 rupees by 2034 if the policy is not changed. As of December of last year, solar net metering consumers have transferred a burden of 159 billion rupees to grid consumers, a figure that is expected to rise to 4.24 trillion rupees by 2034 without the timely amendments. Is that a valid reason?
Well, I have a different perspective on that because I am a proponent of renewable energy and solar energy. This is a very positive step for Pakistan. I mean, international media covered it like Pakistan got this solar boom and sort of thing. I would say that Pakistan's power sector worries, they are stem from two biggest reasons. First, that we have installed so much electricity capacity and we are not utilizing that electricity capacity. And second, inefficiencies in our transmission and distribution systems. If we get rid of those two things, maybe solar rooftop would not be as much as bad as we are currently sort of reflecting it. But we need to sort of have it maybe a holistic policy where we think it in terms of retiring or early retiring some of the generation capacity so that the rest of the capacity is optimally utilized, and we again incentivize the solar rooftop, and then we create this economy energy nexus, and then bring the environmental debate, because solar that is low emission technologies. We are fighting against climate change. We are negotiating resilience and sustainability fund facility with IMF as well. So that would again complement these sort of things. So we need to have this economy, energy and environment approach. From that angle, rooftop solar makes sense, and this decision would be, I would say, in hurried decision.
All right. Also, there are valid concerns. There's higher penetration of distributed solar could put infrastructure at risk of failure as well, because most of the net meter surplus loads are concentrated in the larger cities, and we've seen that as well, where rapid capacity expansion might compromise supply stability. For a layman, how do you explain this whole situation?
Well, Pakistan's transmission and distribution system is already outdated. We feel we have multiple levels of interruptions. We have outdated transformers, wires, poles. So when this innovative solution comes to Pakistan's power sector, and there was a rapid and exponential uptake, in that way there was more feedback electricity to the national grid. In that way, particularly those areas which have more concentration of rooftop solar and net metering, transformers, they trip frequently. There are more interruption in those areas. So we need to not only look for the solutions, particularly how to sort of rationalize solar consumers and net meters. We also need to invest on our grid systems or our distribution system, so that we can integrate these innovative technologies, these renewable energy technologies, these variable technologies, so that we are more aligned with the futuristic technologies. But again, the solution will come from a holistic approach, which will decarbonize or early retire our generation capacity, plus invest on transmission and distribution systems, and corporatize distribution networks, so that we have more innovative solution at distribution level, and we integrate more of these renewable or distributed generation solutions.
All right, you've talked about the significant decrease in the prices of these solar panels as well, and I had the list as well, but we're a bit short of time to talk about the price reduction. But how beneficial will this price reduction be for the end user now that there is a revised policy as well?
Well, if you see the electricity tariff, if you decrease buyback rate to 0, still solar panels, rooftop solars, and they will make sense.
Okay.
Because electricity tariff has increased so much that people simply cannot afford, particularly those who have consume more electricity. If you see Pakistan's tariff structure, you will see that it was formulated back in 1990s when there was shortage of electricity, and it was created in a way that discourages high consumption of electricity. But now we need to see that whether that problem exists. No, that problem does not exist, because we have excess capacity. We need to encourage people, those are on national grid, to consume more electricity. So we need to couple this initiative with tariff reforms as well, so that consumers, those who are consuming more electricity, they are incentivized, they are encouraged, so that not only their electricity burden gets down, grid's utilization rate in terms of electricity demand increase also increases, so that the capacity charges and fixed cost in per capita terms, that declines as well. Yeah.
But one phrase answer, last question. More and more consumers are installing solar panels across Pakistan as well, now in the small towns as well and villages as well. Do you really feel it's a viable alternative to the normal electricity or grid electricity?
Well, I would say it is not a viable alternative. This decision, maybe it fire back, because the grid's demand would continue to decline because electricity tariff is so high. People will still install solar rooftop, not in net metering terms, but on the off-grid systems, and that will again causes the decline in the electricity demand, and will create more pressure to those who are connected with the national grid. Again, the solution lies in integrated approach. The government can incentivize or subsidize solar panel for those who are protected or lifeline consumers. In that way, the cross subsidization that can be reduced, and again the electricity tariff can be brought down. This will create increase in electricity demand for the national grid, and this will increase the utilization rate of national grid.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Khalid, energy expert, to have joined us and have discussed this new policy, and of course the repercussions that it's going to have, and of course the different points of views that are also emanating. And thank you very much for clarifying that for laymen like myself, because there are so many technical terms that I don't understand and what they mean in terms of what to do and what not to do and where all of it is going. So thank you very much to have highlighted that. Stay with us for 2 minutes while I end this show. Our ladies and gentlemen, today concerns the 12th death anniversary of the 1965 war hero, Air Commodore Muhammad Mahmud Alam, or Alam as he is known as. Air Commodore Alam achieved the remarkable feat of downing 5 Indian Air Force jets in just under 1 minute in the 1965 war, a record that remains unbeaten to date. He shot down these 5 Indian fighter jets piloting his F-86 Sabre jet plane, becoming an ace in a day on the 7th of September 1965. In total, he has achieved a feat of 9 confirmed kills and 2 probables during a period of 11 days. And he was, of course, for this very reason, honored with the prestigious Sitara-e-Jurrat with Bar for his outstanding performance in the 1961 as well as Sitara-e-Imtiaz military. He passed away on this very date, that is 18th of March in 2013 at the age of 78 after a prolonged illness. We need to remember heroes such as Alam because it is because of their sacrifices and because of their relentless struggle for the defense of Pakistan that we can breathe a sigh of relief and call ourselves citizens of a country in a space where we can call our own. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's Newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news story segments that pertain to us. Stay safe. Have a blessed Ramadan. Allah Hafiz.